Good evening and welcome to Oh What a Show. I'm your host, Paul Valley. This is Ryan Blake and this is Jon Shearer. We're coming to you live on the Sideline Sports Network. It is a beautiful Monday evening on April 25th, 2022, the year of our Lord. Guys, a lot of stuff to talk about today. First and foremost, the thing that I want to dive into right off the bat, for those of you who don't know, Adam Jones was on VSiN the other day, and then he was on Glenn Clark's first installment of his new show with the NFL chick Sarita Hubbard on 105.7 The Fan, and he basically let it be known that since he left the Orioles, he has had no contact with the Orioles. They haven't reached out to him. Robert Andino got a phone call about being part of the 30-year anniversary celebration of Oriole Park at Camden Yards, and Adam Jones has not received a phone call yet. And this is a pretty egregious thing for one of the most celebrated players in the history of this franchise, one of the most important players in the history of this franchise. First and foremost, guys, I just want to get your reactions. Ryan, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, it's if it appears to be what it is on the surface, or if it is what it appears to be on the surface, rather, it's certainly very disappointing and disheartening. Adam Jones was the face of the Orioles for almost 10 years, a very good player, the heart and soul of a winning ball club, which was the first we had seen since 1997. And it's frustrating to know that, perhaps because he exercised his 10-5 rights and turned down a trade to the Phillies, exercised that no trade clause, which the Orioles gave him in his contract, by the way, then,
Right.
it seems like it's a grudge from the ownership side. And we hope that's not the case, but that's certainly what it seems to be. I saw a lot of people blaming Elias for this, and sure, maybe he has some type of say on who they reach out to, but this feels like an ownership thing. I think it's very possible that Elias has never even met Adam Jones. Surely he has his contact information and will be able to reach out, and maybe he can be at the bottom of trying to amend this issue. But maybe they're just going in alphabetical order. Maybe they just don't want him around because they're holding some type of stupid grudge. But it's frustrating to say the least.
Yeah, like you said, it makes no sense. I mean, Mike Elias has nothing to do with Adam Jones. Obviously, when you become a GM of a team, you're going to research the history. You're going to understand what the history means to an organization, what it means to the fans. So you know that Adam Jones is a big part of the history. It's not just Adam Jones that hasn't really had any contact. It's other guys like Scope and Machado that the team hasn't contacted for any of their 30th anniversary events as well. I don't know if you guys have heard that as well. So, like, there's something there, even though this team gave them the first semblance of relevancy when we had our nice run with those guys. And what seems like since like 1999, early 2000s, like that was the last time we were really relevant, aside from the nice years with Machado and them. And you're just kind of not going to invite these guys that were the core, the heart and soul of that. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, with a guy like Adam Jones, a guy like Nick Markakis, and I would imagine they've reached out to Nick Markakis. If they've reached out to Robert Andino, and maybe they have, maybe they're going alphabetically by last name. They just haven't gotten to the J's and the M's yet. What I will say for Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope is they're still playing. They're still playing on other teams, and the celebration's August 6th at the ballpark, so I don't think that they'd be able to come, so they probably don't get the invitation. Now, those are guys who Machado certainly will be in the Orioles Hall of Fame, and he'll get his moment to be celebrated at Camden Yards when his playing days are done. I don't think that it's a big deal that they haven't been invited because they're still playing and their teams will be having games that day. With Adam Jones, it's egregious. Now, from talking with Glenn, who conducted the interview with Adam yesterday on 105.7 The Fan, he said that he's talked to people within the Orioles and it's been more of an oversight and a mistake rather than them holding a grudge for him exercising his 10-5 rights and right of first refusal. It seems as though Adam seems to think that there is a grudge being held about it. But look, they've got to go a long way to making this right. And when I say that, you can't just say, oh, we're really sorry that we haven't reached out to you. We'd like you to be there. You got to go several steps further. And we're talking offer him to sign a 1 year or a 1 day contract with the Baltimore Orioles on the field so he can officially retire as a Baltimore Oriole. I think he should be the focal point of the 30-year celebration. They should include that. And guys, maybe I'm off base with this. I think they should retire his number. Nobody has worn number 10 since he left the franchise. I don't know that anybody's going to wear it. And what he meant to this team, what he meant to this community, them not winning for 14 years, him being the centerpiece of that Eric Bedard trade, and then becoming the heart and soul of the franchise. And let's talk about that for a second. The fact that they trade for you to be that guy, and then you become that guy, and so much more. What he meant to the team, what he meant to the franchise, the fans, and the community as a whole. Just because he didn't win a World Series, he's one guy. They were damn good in 2012, even better in 2014, and damn good again in 2016. It's not his fault they didn't win a World Series. I say invite him back, sign him to that one-day contract so he retires an Oriole, and then retire his number.
Yeah, and not to mention, not to interrupt you, Ryan, but how many times in Orioles history have we traded for a prospect and it actually worked out to this degree? Like, it doesn't happen at least for us, it doesn't really happen. So this is very much a rarity for us. And when you look at Adam Jones' first 2 years with the Mariners, it looked like he was not going to make it. Like he kind of was a guy we added in. It wasn't that we were trading for Adam Jones. We were getting George Shearer, and Adam Jones just happened to be coming along with. It just happened to be because George Shearer was a commodity for us. That was what we wanted, that back end guy. And Adam Jones just happened to be a piece that got thrown in. But he ended up developing so much.
Not to interrupt you. And I don't want to undercut you here. Adam Jones was the centerpiece of that trade. Adam Jones was the centerpiece of that trade. It was him and then Tillman. It was more like Shearer was a throw because Shearer wasn't the pitcher that he was with the Orioles before he got to the Orioles. He was a solid reliever, but then he became an all-star closer with the team. Adam Jones was the centerpiece to the point where he announced that he had been traded to the Orioles because he was a top 100 prospect, and they actually got mad at him for announcing it before the trade had been completely finalized. So,
right,
but what I'm
saying is
full transparency here.
Yeah, just looking at his stats. I mean, he had 8 RBIs his first year with Seattle, 4 RBIs his second year, 216 average and a 246 average. So it was a prospect that had obviously potential, but you weren't sure if he was going to pan out yet. In Seattle, it was looking like he might not pan out. Then he goes to Baltimore and immediately hits 270. The guy drives in 57 his first year, and the numbers just kept getting better and better. You know what I mean? So it just started to develop, and then and everything to me that Adam Jones is and was, not only to the Orioles but to baseball, was in the photo where he robbed the home run in the, he was in the USA jersey and he was leaping over the wall. Mm-hmm. To me, that was everything that Adam Jones was as an Oriole and just as a baseball player. That's what he was, and that's what he meant to the Orioles when you look at that photo. I know he wasn't in an Orioles uniform, but to me, that's exactly what he meant to the Orioles. It was that type of heart and soul.
And I think it adds an extra layer that it was Machado whom he robbed with that catch. Yeah, it's certainly an exciting piece. But yeah, I mean, you can't talk about recent Orioles history without bringing up Adam Jones. He has to be there for the celebration. I don't hate Paul's idea of retiring his number. I kind of have mixed feelings about it, but I'm not sure in terms of talent level you can put him in the conversation with the other 6 guys whose names are retired. But in terms of what he meant to the organization, he's right up there at the top. So he has to be a part of it. And I want to say that I got a chance to shake the hand of the GM the Mariners GM who pulled the trigger on that Adam Jones trade. And I thanked him for it. And then I immediately felt bad because he told me that that's why he doesn't have a job. So,
man.
But hey, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. I was with him for about a full week. And then I finally got to say, hey, I just want you to know I'm an Orioles fan. Thank you for Adam Jones. I'm sorry. I know it's a bad reflection on you, but it made me very happy.
Now, did you tell him that like right as you spent the whole week with him and you were about to leave and you're like, hey, by the way, I'm an Orioles fan. Thanks to that trade. Ha ha ha.
I was kind of on my way out, but
nice.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say something,
Well, yeah, and when you look at that trade, at the time, Eric Bedard was one of the best young left-handed pitchers in the game.
Gosh, yeah.
And then what the Orioles got for him, you get an all-star face of the franchise center fielder. You get a top of the rotation starter in Chris Tillman. You get an all-star closer in George Shearer. And then you also happen to get Cam McAuliffe, who actually became a solid reliever once he left Baltimore. So the Mariners certainly, and then I think he pitched a year or two in Seattle before he was gone. It was in Boston. So they really got fleeced on that. It sucks the guy lost his job, but you can kind of understand why when you see what the Orioles got in return and what those players ultimately became. Now, speaking of Orioles and what players became, we're seeing what players are becoming with this team right now. They just went out on that West Coast trip. They're going to be in New York starting tomorrow night. We'll get to that here in a bit. But they had a really nice series against the Angels. They won the first two games in fairly decisive fashion, I would say. Where the pitching is what was the story of the year, the story of the series. Bruce Zimmerman, you get the bad news about John Means, and all Bruce Zimmerman does is go out there and pitch like a dog. He goes the first two times through the order, Ohtani, Trout, and Rendon 0 for 6 with 4 Ks. He strikes out Ohtani 3 times, does walk Trout, and then a 2-run homer to Rendon in the 7th inning. But man, he is pitching his tail off this year. Looks like a totally different guy to me. This Orioles pitching staff held their own in the first 2 games of that series, guys.
Yeah, I mean the changeup with Zimmerman's dirty. He's locating very well. If not for that Rendon homer late in the outing, he'd be the only pitcher in the league with a 0.00 ERA at this point among qualified starters, of course. But yeah, it's hard not to like what you saw from the team out in Anaheim. And especially in the third game, to fall behind 6-0 before recording an out, and then to come back and tie the game, only end up losing by a run. It shows that there's a lot of fight in this team,
Yeah.
and they might be down, but they're never going to be out. And to see guys like Trey Mancini and Austin Hayes finally get that first home run on the board, I think that's going to do numbers to kickstart the offense, and hopefully they can continue some of that momentum into New York. Because guys, I want to win a series against the Yankees again.
Yeah, just to see them all implode on social media.
And not to mention, Ryan, you talked about the third game. You talked about how the Orioles had 2 good pitching games. I actually think the third game was a good pitching game. They only had 1 bad inning. If you look at the final game we lost yesterday, they had 1 bad inning. It was the first inning. Aside from that, they gave up 1 run the rest of the game, right? 1 run,
It was
and it was
on
on
a
a bases loaded
yeah.
walk, which really hurt. But the fact that you had 0 outs, you had given up 6 runs, your starter gave you absolutely nothing, and your bullpen was able to hold Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout in that lineup to 1 run on a bases loaded walk the rest of the game. That's a hell of a job. Like
Even
as much
Lakin's,
as much as we have knocked him, he did a hell of a job holding this. The game could have been like a 15-0 type of game. But he held the door down. He closed it. And then the offense slowly climbed back into it, and he gave them a chance to get back into this game. I can't say enough about how good of a job that the bullpen did, and Brandon Hyde did of managing the bullpen. I just got to give everybody their props in not giving up, not just saying, well, we won 2 games, it's 6-0 before we recorded an out. Let's just pack this up and it's over. Like I got to give all the guys credit for fighting back. Like I took a lot out of this game.
Yeah, and it was one of the more what I like about this team, and the difference between this team this year and the difference in the team last year. Because if you remember, after that John Means no-hitter on May 5th last year, the team was 15-16, and then within a couple days they were starting a 14-game losing streak. And while they were 15-16, they'd win some games 6-5 or 8-4 or something like that,
Yeah.
and then they'd lose a game 11-1. This team, by and large, has been in every single game. They're competitive. They're fighting to the last out. Even when they're down in the 9th inning, they're getting guys on base, but they're just not finding the ways to score those runs just yet. I love the fight in this team, being down 6-0, like you said, John, with nobody out in the top of the bottom of the first inning, and coming all the way back and giving yourself an opportunity to win that ball game and tie things up. It was an impressive performance, as impressive of a performance as there can be with the loss. And Ryan, before you get to your point, I just want to know, guys, I don't know about you, but when the Orioles go out there and they win the first 2 games of a 3-game series and they have a chance for the sweep, and then they lose that third game, they still get the series win, but it doesn't feel the same, right? Because you're like, the momentum's not there. It's like, for lack of a better term, it's like kissing your sister. It's like You won the first 2 games. Let's go win that third one. Oh, we lost. That's how I feel. Like, yeah, we won the series, but we lost the third game.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, Lakins came in, gave up that grand slam to Joe Adell, who's a very good hitter, by the way, and then went 3 innings without giving up another hit. So the job that he did after surrendering the homer, the rest of the bullpen was great, aside from that rough 8th inning bases loaded walk. Um, Overall, the bullpen has been incredibly solid, much better than we could have asked for. But to your point, Paul, yeah, I get what you mean. It feels a little better to win the rubber match, the final game of a series,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to come out on top. Losing 2 or winning 2 and then losing 1, it doesn't leave the same kind of good taste in your mouth. Obviously, you take the wins when you can get them. You take the series win anytime you can get it.
Absolutely.
But I hear what you're saying about, you kind of want to go out with a victory instead of going out with a loss, even if you take the series.
And I took a lot away from this road trip. I mean, we're what, 6-10 right now, but we're playing. To me, we're a 500 team, like at minimum right now. And I say that because there were plenty of games I was looking at, like for example the A's series. We were down by 1 run, I believe, in the top of the 7th, runner on first and second, no outs. We had an opportunity to at least tie that game up. We don't bunt the guy over, which I was screaming at my phone. Bunt the guy over to second and third, so you have 1 out and you can knock in the tying run. But sure enough, we struck out. I think it was a strikeout. No, it was a pop out to the catcher. And then of course the next hit was a hit to move the guys over. Sure, that was an out, but move the guys over so you have 2 outs, and then the final guy got out. But that was a game you easily could have tied and went for the win. So as bad as our offense played in the A's series, we could have easily split. The pitching definitely held its own. You held the Angels down for the most part. Beside 1 bad inning, you held the Angels down that whole series. You had a chance to sweep them. I mean, 6-10 doesn't look to me like I don't take it away and say, well, man, we missed a sweep. Like, this is a team that everybody's projecting to lose like 100 games, and we're in every game and we're fighting back. And I know there's no like, you know what I mean? There's no participation trophies,
Right.
but when you're a team that coming into the season, nobody's given any hope. Like, you look at some of these big name sites and they literally are putting 0% on what the Orioles' chances are of making the playoffs. When you see that for your team and the season hasn't even started, when you see the way our team is responding, this is a way different team, like you said, Paul, you said that. It's a way different team than last year. This isn't the team that's just like, yeah, we're out here, we're just collecting a check. Like, no, this is completely different.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here and I'm trying not to buy in. Trying not to buy
I'm
in
trying to do the same thing,
because
Paul.
I got
Trying.
fooled last year. John Means throws a no-hitter. They just took 4-6 on a West Coast road trip. They're back home, and you're feeling good about the team. They're 15-16, and then the wheels fall off, right? 14-game losing streak, 8-game losing streak, 19-game losing streak. Historically all-time worst pitching staff in baseball. So you're trying to not let yourself get primed for a letdown like that again. But what I'm seeing from this team, to your point, John, they're 6-10, but it feels a lot better than 6-10 because the Cubs just won a game the other day, 21-0. The Orioles aren't on the wrong side of any of those games yet. Now they're not on the right side of any of those games yet either.
They could have been yesterday.
But they're exactly, and they held them down and they fought back. They're playing maybe not good baseball, but competitive baseball, and that's what you want to see. And then you look at it, and what you want to see from this team is competitive baseball because you know that Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish and Adley Rutschman and DL Hall, you know that they're coming, and the team's only going to get better when those guys get here. How much better? They're still rookies. They're still prospects. That remains to be seen. And that brings me to Chris Ellis. Not giving the Orioles length yesterday, probably has a shoulder injury, it's looking like. And that lines up, not that you want an injury for Chris Ellis. I liked what he did last year.
No, you never want an injured anybody.
All he's done is serve himself well since coming to the Baltimore Orioles. But the timing, he goes down, now you have a need in your rotation, and guess who just went 6 innings and 86 pitches in his last start at Norfolk? Kyle Bradish. And he's the guy who's probably getting called up first of that group of pitchers. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, you know what? You've already thrown more pitches than anybody else on this team in any start. It's your time to shine, baby. Get on up here. What do you guys think? Are you guys thinking the same thing? Kyle Bradish to take Chris Ellis' spot in the rotation.
I was going to say the same thing. Ryan, did you see the Aberdeen Ironbirds tweets yesterday and today? Did you catch any of them?
About Adley and DL
Yes.
and Rico Garcia.
Yes. It
Oh
was
yeah.
fantastic. And then
Oh yeah.
today they tweeted out like let me in. Their DMs were like, everybody was like, let me in, because now everybody wants to go to the Aberdeen Ironbirds games, and they're asking about when and what time those guys will be there and stuff like that. So it's exciting because we're finally like, okay, now we know Rushman's going to be there. That's progress, because soon enough he's just going to make his way up. These other guys are going to make their way up. And like you said, Paul, if we're 15 and 16, if we sit at that, it's different than last year, because you have all those guys coming up. And if you have all those, those guys are coming, and you're at about that, 500 mark, Ryan, I can't help but start to have a little bit of hope.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
shouldn't, but I can't help it.
No, I'd cautious optimism, I would call it. And we'll get more into Hall and Rutschman in a second, but to Paul's point, I'm on the Bradish train. I want to see him come up and replace somebody, whether he's replacing John Means or if Chris Ellis is out for an extended period of time. And you hate that it's because of injury that these guys are knocking on the door, but my biggest takeaway from Bradish's outing the other day wasn't his line. It wasn't the 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. It was the 86 pitches.
Exactly.
That was after going 58 and 68 in his first 2 starts. So that was a big leap from his second start to his third in terms of pitch count. And that tells me that he's stretched out and ready to go. Paul, you mentioned that not a single Orioles pitcher has thrown that many in an outing. Why not bring him up? I think he's ready. He's already on the 40-man. You don't have to designate anybody for assignment. You don't have to cut anybody. You just need to make space on the 28-man roster at this point.
It'll be down to 26 on May 2nd. But
yeah, true. Okay. So there will be some cuts in the near future, but yeah, I think Bradish is knocking on the door, and I'm ready to see him. And if he's making his debut at Camden Yards, I'll be first in line for tickets.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be on Sunday when I'm at the game myself. But we'll see about that. But no, it's exciting times, and you look at what Grayson Rodriguez did, and the cool thing is we had Grayson Rodriguez on the show this past week, and we were talking to him on Glenn Clark Radio, and we were talking to him about his goals, and his goals are he wants to get over that 100 pitch threshold, get through a lineup a third time. And with the progressions that we're seeing with Bradish, that we're seeing with Grayson Rodriguez, he's gone 61 pitches, 67, 75, which means that his next progression is probably to the mid 80s, then the mid 90s, and they're probably going to let him go if he's there 7 innings, maybe 8. I doubt 8 innings, but 6 or 7 innings, and we could legitimately a month from now be talking about the impending debut of Grayson Rodriguez. And then you get really excited about this team. And it's like, if these guys can just, and what I love about it is the pitching staff has been so good to start this year. These guys can pitch down in Norfolk without the pressure of, we got to get you here. You got to get here. We need you. We don't need you right now. We'd like you. We think that you're better than what we have right now. But right now what we have is pretty damn good. So while they're doing what they're doing, we know it's not going to last. Hopefully it coincides when the pitching comes back down to the earth, coincides with when Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez are ready to get up here.
And even a couple guys in the bullpen. I sent out a tweet the other day. Both Nick Vespi and Cole Uvula have yet to allow a run at AAA Norfolk in 7 relief innings. Uvula hasn't allowed a hit yet, and Vespi has struck out 11. And so I'm on the hype train for those 2 guys as well. But like you said, Paul, where do you put them? The bullpen has been outstanding. Mm-hmm. So, whether it's someone like Paul Fry who ends up off the team, whether it's, trade, DFA, whatever, it's hard to predict when we're going to be able to squeeze those guys in because the pitching has been so good. And I think you could make the same case for a majority of the starting rotation at this point. Obviously, there are a couple of guys who we think this is kind of a flash in the pan. Mm-hmm. But there are 3 guys in Bradish, Rodriguez, and Hall, and a few others knocking on the door who could be completely new faces in this rotation and good, young, controllable talent. I'm excited. I'll leave it at that. I'm excited.
And this is where we wanted to get to, right? For all those people that are on Twitter, that are on social media, that are so angry at Mike Elias, what's his plan? He has no timetable. If you paid attention to his introductory press conference and what he said, He said, well, it's going to be a rebuild. It might take longer than you want it to. We're going to try and do it as quickly as possible, but we're doing this the right way so that we don't ever have to do it again. We're going to get a presence in the international market. Boom, $25 million academy in the Dominican Republic. Spend all but $100 of their international bonus slot money this year in that market. He's done building up the farm system in 3 years from being in the bottom 3 or 4 teams in baseball to being in the top 1 to 4 teams in baseball. Everything he said he was going to do, he's done. And what's the next phase? Phase 2 is watching that young talent progress to the major league level and give you that excitement. And guys, that's where we're at right now. We are in phase 2, where in June, July, August, we're going to be watching these young, super talented players come up from our farm system and inject enthusiasm and energy that this team hasn't seen in basically 5 years. How can you not be excited right now?
The only thing I'll say is, if we're gonna do that, we got to get rid of the Ben Booms and we got to get rid of the Odors. That needs to go out of the lineup. Like, if we're gonna do this, get those guys out of the lineup. I'm sorry, but the Ben Booms and the Odors are just they're an albatross in that lineup. You look at them and it's just like, oh my gosh, get these guys offensively. I don't want them anywhere near the lineup because these guys can't hit. They can't hit water if they're in a boat. Like, I don't know. It's just, I watch these guys and I'm like, is there something that like Brandon Hyde sees that I don't see? Because I just don't see it with some of these guys offensively. It's an atrocity.
I think Ryan and I probably have the same reaction to that as far as Odor and Ben Boom. So Ryan, I'm going to let you handle this one. Let them know why those guys are on the team right now.
They've been all right lately. I wasn't too thrilled with Odor especially. I've been very vocal about he shouldn't have made the team out of spring training. He came through with a big hit against the Yankees to put us ahead in the 8th inning, break a scoreless tie. Finally a hit with runners in scoring position, and he's been okay lately. Ben Boom had a heck of a game. I believe that was yesterday. He went 2 for 4. Pulled a bunt single into the shift, which you don't expect a catcher to ever do. But I will say, John, you won't once Adley's here, you won't have to worry about Ben Boom anymore.
Yep.
Once Jordan Westberg is here, you might not have to worry about Odor.
But you see my point?
They're in the lineup.
I
absolutely get you.
Yeah.
I absolutely get you, but you also need those fillers while you wait for the rest of the group.
And it's not just those guys, but there's so many guys. I looked at the averages yesterday. There's so many guys with like under 200 averages, and I'm just like, oh my gosh! Like, how are you a major league hitter and you can't hit the Mendoza line? Like, how's that possible?
That's what's going on all across baseball right now.
Yeah.
And the weather has been colder all across the country for this time of year, so that has an impact. It was a shorter spring training, but if you look, this is the lowest batting average and lowest OPS in the major league average wise. I think in like 70 years. Or something like that. It's widespread across the league. The thing with Odor, I didn't understand the signing when it happened. I still don't think he really should have a spot on this team, but I understand now that what they're really trying to do is they're trying to squeeze that last bit of juice out of this guy. He's hit 30 homers in the majors 3 times, and this is a guy that if he has some kind of output like that, you can trade him for some kind of low to mid-level prospect, and maybe that player becomes something for you. And that's the only reason, because the Texas Rangers are paying him $12 million to not play for them. You know what I mean? So the Orioles are paying him the league minimum. They're paying him the league minimum. And if they get a prospect out of that, that's a win for the Orioles. I don't think they expect him to be a game changer. They kind of hope that he would be an above average player to get something for them. So, guys, moving on. I know that we're running out. See, you get to talking Orioles baseball, and the next thing you know, half an hour is going by, and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. Look, the Orioles are heading to New York. Before we talk about that, we do have to address the John Means thing. And Ryan, John, this was it doesn't soften the blow, but this is what we expected when he has the strained forearm, and they say that he's getting second and third opinions. You don't get a second and third opinion if the first opinion's a good one. Tommy John was written in big neon letters on the wall, but he finally made it official yesterday, or on Saturday, excuse me. And thank you, John, for doing this 2 minutes after the bat round ended, letting everybody know that he's having Tommy John surgery, so he's gonna miss this year, the rest of this year, obviously. going to miss a large chunk of next year, if not the entire season next year, because this is a 12 to 18-month injury.
Yeah.
And
Especially
look,
for his age.
yeah, I mean, he's not old per se. He's
But
28,
he's
I believe.
28, 20. You know what I mean?
I
Like
think he
that
turns 29 this
age.
year.
Yeah, that
So
age with Tommy John it's almost a death sentence for a starting pitcher. At least to my, you know what I mean? So you're not 23 and getting Tommy John. You'd rather have it early in your career than later in your career.
I will
It's
say,
more of a
didn't
death sentence later in your
Justin
career.
Verlander just had didn't he just have Tommy John surgery? But that was, and he was what,
But Justin
38?
Verlander's like a future Hall of Famer,
Hey,
right?
John Means threw a no hitter.
Uh,
Oh, it was the drop
Hey.
third strike away from being
Yeah,
a
so did
perfect
Dallas
game.
Braden.
Yeah, Dallas Braden was all right, but anyway, I digress. Look, John Means, the thing about this, it's giving other guys an opportunity. You'd rather have John Means in there. Bruce Zimmerman has stepped up, but how much better would it be if you had Zimmerman and Means pitching lights out for this rotation, and then you have those guys like we mentioned before, and Rodriguez, Hall, and Bradish coming up to fill the voids. But how do we look at it now? Chances are when he's back to full strength, it's going to be 2024. That's his last year under team control before he becomes a free agent. The Orioles, they could maybe have a chance to extend this guy for a more team-friendly deal because all he's done is get injured in his career. Been really good when he's out there, but he's missed a lot of time in all 4 seasons now with Tommy John being the biggest one. Could they get a team-friendly deal and bring this guy back, and all of a sudden you're looking at a solid number 3 or number 4 who, oh, by the way, is throwing a near-perfect game in his career?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. It's not a fun position to be in if you're the Orioles. We can talk about the potential implications of youngsters coming up and filling the spots. We could talk about the implications of a potential team-friendly contract, but the whole point that I want to get at is John Means is a guy you want on the mound every 5th day, and the
Yeah.
Orioles are going to greatly miss that. I'm personally going to miss seeing the picture of his mustache every 5th day. I really enjoy that part of Orioles Twitter, but yeah, it's a shame, but obviously it's the kind of thing where you kind of have to accept it, and you hope that, like many pitchers who go out and get Tommy John surgery, you hope that he comes back stronger, and this isn't going to keep him out for more than a year and a half.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I guess time will tell. I guess I know it's a cliche, but time will tell for this. It'll depend on how this rebuild goes. So if all these guys, Rushman and all these guys, develop enough, and this team is on the up and up, and they're projected to win 85 to 90 games, and he comes back, then you're like, okay, I can pencil this guy in addition to all the other guys that have developed. In addition to, you know what I'm saying? Like the roster's finally blooming, and now we get John Means back from his Tommy John surgery. Boom, you can add that in. That's when I think it would make sense to bring him back and be happy about bringing him back. If the team's still in the area where we're at right now, then it's like, you know what I mean? He's 2 years older, coming off Tommy John surgery, so many injuries.
Yeah,
It's more of an
a fair
afterthought
point.
to me. Yeah.
It's a fair point, and hopefully by the time you get to that point, maybe you've added some free agent pitching. That's the whole point. That's half the reason they moved that wall back in left field was so they'd be more likely to sign some starting pitchers in free agency. All I know is that if you have that rotation that we think we can have with Rodriguez and Hall and Bradish and some other guys, and then you throw a John Means into that also, that's a bonus. That's a really nice problem to have. And speaking of go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
I just want to say this as well. We talk about some Orioles fans seem to think that Means struggled last year after his no hitter, that he wasn't quite himself. His numbers weren't excellent, and that's fine. John Means, he's not. Look, he is the Orioles ace. He's the best pitcher we've had in several years. He's not going to be Clayton Kershaw or
No.
Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer. He's not going to be that guy. And perhaps his numbers look a little worse as a number 1 starter. But you put John Means in a rotation where he's the 3 or the 4, he's a damn good 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So if he can come back and slot himself into the middle of a rotation in a couple years, I'm all about it.
And we all know that, for example, if you play in the NFL and you play on the Jaguars, your stats are probably going to be worse. But if you go and play on the Kansas City Chiefs, your stats are going to be a lot better. If you play on an offense with Patrick Mahomes, your stats are going to be better. You'll get more opportunities. If you play on an offense where right now the Trevor Lawrence, you're not going to have the stats, same stats. You play on the Orioles last year and this year, your stats aren't going to be as good because the defense isn't quite as good. The offense isn't quite as good as like a Boston or the Dodgers. You know what I'm saying? So if the team is a lot better in 2 years when John Means comes back, if they're, like I said, at that 85 to 90 win type of team, projection type of team, then when John Means comes back, he knows he probably has the defense, has the offense to back him up. Then your mindset is, I don't got to do everything myself. And you go and you can be yourself instead of forcing things.
Hey, go
That's how I
back.
And
see it.
pitching
Go
becomes
back.
a lot easier when that's the case.
Yeah.
And go back to the 60s and 70s. Have 320 game winners in your rotation. Look, and we mentioned DL Hall, and he and Adley Rutschman are beginning a rehab assignment tomorrow in Aberdeen. I have no idea when DL Hall is pitching yet. I have to work tomorrow night. I was going to try to go to the game on Wednesday. I'm hoping that he's pitching on Wednesday. I have no idea though. For Adley, this is certainly he's the Orioles' starting catcher. He's on a rehab assignment. For DL Hall, this is get your innings built up, get to where you're supposed to be, which is Double A, and then we'll progress from there. With that in mind, guys, we had Todd Karpovich on the bat around on Saturday, and he said he expects to see Rutschman debut in June. I think that's a little far away. I think if he's starting a rehab assignment now, maybe he gets a handful of games at each level. Ryan, I'll ask you, and then we'll ask John the same question. How long do you think it's going to take for Adley to get to I was going to say back to the big leagues, but get to the big leagues once his rehab starts on Tuesday?
I think if the Orioles were serious about giving him a shot at breaking the club out of spring training, then I don't think this rehab process is going to be more than 3 weeks. That's the timeline that I would like to put on it, that I would be comfortable with putting on it. Obviously we want him here as soon as possible. If it's any more than 3 weeks, I'll start to wonder a little bit. But 3 weeks is the number I'm going to give him, and hopefully he's able to make a debut on a Friday night at Camden Yards, and we can see him under the lights. He can start his career with the triple like Machado and Wieters did, and it'll be the start of an illustrious career.
John, go ahead.
I definitely think June makes. I mean, it doesn't. Obviously, May makes more sense, but I think they'll base it on how the team is going. So if the team keeps playing like they are right now, 6-10, but like I said, to me they're playing a lot better. I think if they continue to play like this and the pitching continues like this, you're like, hey, let's add Rutschman in. The pitching staff is doing really well. Let's add in this top prospect in Rutschman. He can catch with these guys. It'll only make our pitching better. I think that's something that they'll take in. You know what I mean? Because Mike Elias isn't a guy that's just a reactionary guy. He's not just going to say, oh, wow, we're doing good. Let's add him in. Like he clearly cares about the analytics. He clearly cares about things as opposed to just reacting to and being prisoner of the moment. So I think Michael Elias is going to take a lot of time, and he has taken a lot of time thinking about this. He's going to be very calculated, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He's not just going to pull the trigger. He's really going to think about this. This is what I'm.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. I think we're going to see Rutschman sooner rather than later. I think we'll definitely see him before June, assuming no setbacks with this. And I think that they slow played it enough with him. I think the way that they treated this, having it take 6 weeks rather than the 2 to 3, is so that they know it doesn't happen again. So there's not.
Do you think service time affects it at all? Like, do
No,
you think they're like, hey, June, let's go service time with June?
No, because you only have to miss. You only have to be at the minor league level for the first 15 days of the season. There's 187 games in the season, and you have to play in 172 or less to get that extra year of service time. So once the 15 days were up, that's when that was up. So and then really quickly, just to close things out, Orioles open a series in the Bronx tomorrow night. Some guys getting hot at the right time with that bandbox of a ballpark. Trey Mancini hitting the hell out of the ball with not a lot to show for it. Finally gets in on the scoreboard yesterday with a 3-run homer, another base hit. Cedric Mullins on base 7 times in his last 2 games. What I noticed, what I thought about him that made me think I think he's broken out of this thing was that base hit over the line drive over the shortstop's head on Saturday night. That was a go with the pitch type of swing, a swing that said to me, I think Cedric's starting to lock in. He's got hits in 6 of his last 7 games. You got Jordan Lyles going up against Pedro Severino tomorrow night, and Tyler Wells against Tyler Wells against Jameson Taillon the game after that. Guys, what are we looking at here? What are your feelings on this series? I said on the bat around my final thoughts on Saturday. I think the Orioles are going to hit some home runs in this series. I think that the offense could start to show out a little bit.
Well, Paul, I'm going to correct you real quick because I was hoping I wouldn't have to hear Pedro Severino's name ever again.
Luis Severino. Luis Severino. Oh, man. Brain fart.
Hey,
So
I get it.
realize
It
I said
happens. It happens. The Orioles bats are heating up at the right time. You mentioned Mullins, you mentioned Mancini, I mentioned Hayes earlier.
Mhm.
These guys are starting to get hot, and Yankee Stadium's the perfect place for a hot offense to stay hot. The Orioles obviously showed what they're capable of doing against this team just a couple weeks ago, and I'm ready for some more Yankee spanky. Let's do it.
I think this you got to win the first game of the series in order if you're going to win the series, because I don't think Tyler Wells is going to fare well against this Yankee lineup in Yankee Stadium. I just don't think that he's going to fare well. And Severino's a guy that can kill us. We've seen it before. He can one hit us through 8 innings. Seen things like that before. So I think you have to have tomorrow night's game. I think you have to have that one because I don't think Tyler Wells is going to fare well, and then you go to the rubber match. That's what I think.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you know what I mean. That's the mindset I'm in because I'm not confident in the Tyler Wells in Yankee Stadium.
And you got Zimmerman going in that rubber game, so it'd be nice to have that 1-1 because I don't think they're going. I'm not delusional enough to think that the Orioles are about to sweep the Yankees in New York after taking 2 of 3 from them in Baltimore. Hopefully, it can be another series win. But again, with this team, yeah, it sucks when they lose, but I want to see competitive baseball. And I'm just hoping that they're in these games with a chance to win every single night, and that they can squeak out a win or two with that. Because you got to keep the expectations at a reasonable level. This is still the Orioles. This is still a rebuilding ball club, but have to be pleased with the play that we've seen from this team to date. Only really one game that they weren't in this year. So excited to see what's going to happen the rest of the way. Excited for these prospects to get up here. Excited for another series in New York that hopefully the Orioles can send some Yankee fans home with broken hearts. But guys, great show tonight. Thank you to all of our listeners, all of our viewers for tuning in. Thank you to Ryan for letting this stream on his O's Fans Problems Twitter page. So guys, until next week, thanks for tuning in. This has been Oh, What a Show.